live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And it is a team panel tonight with a literal living legend. I don't have the formal bios. Please forgive me. It's been a busy news day. Counterclockwise, you always start with a woman. This is the great Dr. Ann Burgess, a literal living legend, a professor at the College of Nursing at Boston College, and she's still hard at work. She helped create the psychology of profiling, the literal science. She is one of the OGs of that. She changed the way policing and law enforcement is done. Next up, Rob D'Amico, a 39-year career military and FBI guy that's chased pirates through Somalia and a lot of other crazy things. On the last show or two shows ago, I found out that he was a sniper working the DC sniper case, and he was doing it out of a helicopter, which seems kind of crazy. Last but not least, Scott Duffey, the voice of reason. He's here every Friday. And look at this. Not for me, but for Ann Burgess. He's got his lapel pin on. That looks like the Liberty Bell from here. What is that lapel pin, Scott Duffey?
You would be correct, Joel. That is the FBI Philadelphia office, one of the many lapel pins, which happens to be the seal over the Liberty Bell.
Yeah, we have plastic pins here at Surviving the Survivor. I thought I might wear it on my T-shirt one of these days, but that's the best I can do. So for those of you who have not been on top of the news, and people do have lives, the Altoona Police Department got a tip, and you might wonder where that is. That is in Western Pennsylvania. They got a tip today that a guy resembling the person NYPD was looking for in the shooting of 50-year-old Brian Thompson. Of course, he's was the CEO of UnitedHealthcare Group. Well, they got a tip that this guy looking awfully similar was at a McDonald's eating, and Altoona PD did what they do. They swooped in there, they arrested him, and they contacted the NYPD. And in that time, the NYPD has arrived in Altoona, and there are a lot of things to go through to catch everyone up. This is going to be a bit of a recap show in terms of information, but also you got the legend of profiling here. So we're going to get Ann's take, and we're going to kind of mix it up as we go. Huge thanks for the super sticker. I just saw one whiz by from Cindy Hollenbeck. So thank you so much. Appreciate this greatly. Go ahead, Rob.
Joe, so we get on and I see Ann on there, and I meant to ask if she was in the basement offices, and I said, were you in the FBI? And if Scott had been eating or drinking anything, he would have choked. But it didn't come out. I was so nervous it didn't come out right. I'm like, oh, no. Were you in the offices? Because I think I had her office, as I said before, and I was looking for it. But that was one of those oops, and Scott would have choked if he had anything drinking or eating.
And Ann is one who would take that very well. So I'm sure there is no worry on Ann's part. Love Ann. The comment says here, glad she's back. So let's go through a little bit of this. But first off, I just want to say condolences to Brian Thompson's family. As I understand it, they are burying him today. So obviously a very tragic case. This is the person who police say, and now the NYPD says, was the trigger man, the person responsible for killing 50-year-old Brian Thompson. We've got a picture of Brian here that I want to get up. We're just getting some elements in there, but this is Brian Thompson, of course, again, being laid to rest today. Condolences go out to his two children and to his estranged wife, who police were looking at and had to rule out, and I'm sure are speaking to the suspect. But this, Dr. Ann Burgess, got to defer to you. This is not necessarily how you imagine an assassin to look, strictly from physical attributes here. By the way, he's holding McDonald's box in the upper right still shot. But I mean, you've seen it all. You've seen every type of killer. Are you surprised by this actual profile photo that he used on some of his social media?
I'm not that surprised. It's all about him. It's all of these pictures, and he's smiling, and he's very impressed with himself, which I think we had thought about as one of the profile characteristics. But he certainly has enough photos, and he was willing to show it. Remember, one of the photos was where he pulled the mask down to show a smile. That smile is on many of the photos. So I'm certainly gives us one aspect of his character is, and he's the bodybuilder type. I think I've seen a number of others. What also impresses me is there's no one else in the picture, unless you call that a little animal that he's holding up in the McDonald's box. But is he a loner? We'll get to some of the other things that have been talked about, but I think there are several things that do match what we have seen in some of the serial killers. Of course, that was the group that I looked at, but that's my take at this point, just looking at the photos.
Yeah, and I got plenty more to ask Ann about. And I think tomorrow at 12:30, we're going to do an entire show profiling this person. By the way, Donna Adelson, which is our original case. We had to bump one of the shows today, but she's in court tomorrow. We're taking live coverage of that tomorrow in court. And we're doing a wrap-up show, but at 12:30, we will follow this up. Here's some more photos. I'm going to sprinkle in information as we go, along with questions. And in a little bit, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and get STS Nation questions as well. But this guy, Luigi Mangione, he graduated with honors from the University of Pennsylvania, one of the best schools in the nation. He also completed a Master's of Science in Engineering. His LinkedIn page, which I looked at, says that he is a data engineer, most recently at a car company based in Honolulu. He's got ties to San Francisco. His last address, known address, is in Honolulu. And one of the media outlets already caught up with a person who ran a co-working space that he would do work at, a guy named Nam Vu. And he is reported to have told the media agency there was nothing strange about him. He was a nice guy. Scott Duffey, nothing strange. He was a nice guy. Interesting way to describe. Obviously, he didn't know what this guy was going to eventually do. Same question to you. I mean, you've been doing this forever. Is there a look to a killer? Because people are surprised by the way this guy looks.
All right, don't put me on the spot this evening with the great Ann Burgess. So, because a lot of what I say is probably begged, borrowed, or stolen from the greats before me. So, I can tell you, as Phil and I have often spoke, Joel, on our Fridays, is that anybody can be, with the right set of circumstances, fall into being a killer. And so, we surmise, I think, in the boogeyman and a monster and what a monster looks like. And sometimes those monsters come in great packaging. And I think we're seeing that unfold here.
Yeah, this is a funny comment, but it's interesting. And Rob is, I believe, just doing something real quick. So, Ann, a couple things to you. Stephanie's going, so wait, he ate at the restaurant. McDonald's, obviously known as a takeout restaurant, drive-through. But Ann, what do you make of that? I mean, you guys, and I mean profilers, and you're the OG. What do you make of the fact that he had the chutzpah, as they say in Miami, to sit down and eat at a McDonald's restaurant, as opposed to either going through the drive-thru, I don't know if he had a car, or just taking it to go at the very least. But apparently he was sitting there eating away. Right.
And I think that says a lot about, is he just sitting there waiting for somebody to recognize him? He certainly can see that well, we would like to know if he's been watching television at all to see all the photos that are on display about him, or is that playing more into his narcissism that I can get away with it? It could be either. We're going to have to wait and make sure it's him and what he talks about. I think that's the next step. But at any rate, he certainly his if his the smile is really what gets you, that the and his rather very bold appearance. I think that's the other factor. It certainly matches as we get into some what you've already described, his education. Remember how smart and intelligent the serial killers were. That was one of the things we noted. And to pull off what he did certainly speaks to his ability to plan and to actually pull it off with not getting caught right away. He was able to be on the run for a good 4 or 5 days. And then they find him, of all places, at a McDonald, So that is very different from what we heard from you described at his education at Penn and all of the activities that we see in and all of the things that he's accomplished.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not sure if Space Coast is on at the moment, but someone is saying that there's a possibility he's going to be walked out of the PD in Altoona. And COE, if you can get with Spacey and maybe try to stream in the background, either NBC News Digital or, one of the others. A lot of people, I'm sure, will be taking that live when he walks out. Scott Duffey, this question is in your wheelhouse here. Is this going to be a federal case because of the gun possession and going interstate with it, or is it going to be a New York state case? And are they fighting over that right now? By the way, NYPD is in Altoona. It is unclear whether or not this person is speaking or not, but we will know in due time. By the way, this is a collection of photos. You got the McDonald's where this actually happened, the McDonald's where it happened, the fake New Jersey ID with his photo, it appears. I think that's his photo, which he used to check into the hospital. The other photo, previous one of McDonald's, and then the gun there, Scott, that's allegedly the gun he actually used, already photographed by police. But back to this issue of federal or state case, how's this going to land, do you think?
So being New York, but I would imagine anywhere, this is a local case. This is a homicide, and New York is spent a lot of time and resources, and so they're not going to give it up. It is their case, and it will stay their case. I will say, because of the transient aspect of Luigi, if they, beyond the gun and beyond the IDs and whatnot, that yes, there could be some federal charges thrown on him. It will be interesting to see if they can show wherever he was outside of New York planning this, and then spent his time crossing probably multiple states in order to get and ultimately complete his act. So there are some federal charges that could be levied against him. But my guess is this is straight up a New York prosecution. And then, of course, the feds, if needed, can levy additional charges.
Now, STS, I always say best guest, better community. It's an amazing community. And got a source inside of STS that contacted me just before I went on air. Their children know the shooter, Dr. Ann Burgess, and gave me some interesting information. This is from, again, someone that knows the shooter directly. And the quote from this person is, he cut off most of the family a bit ago after suffering a back injury in Hawaii and then moving to Japan for a bit. And what's interesting about this is on his Twitter profile, and one of the photos, there's 3 pictures, and we'll pull it up a little bit later on. There's the middle photo is an x-ray of what a doctor told me is a lower back fusion. So it's a X-ray of the spine, and you see 4 pins in the bottom of the spine. And again, this is coming straight from an STS source who knows Luigi Mangione. And he said, the source said, he cut off most of the family a bit ago after suffering a back injury in Hawaii and then moving to Japan for a bit. Could it have been this back injury that triggered all of this? What do you make of that piece of information, Ann?
Well, I think we need to make quite a bit of that because we had speculated that it was going to be some health-related issue, whether it was with a relative or, in this case, whether it was with him. Now, back injuries are painful, and so that will be interesting to see what kind of medication he was on. Was he on drugs for the pain or whatever? But that he cut off his family, I find very, very important because in all that I've read, and of course it's not that much at this point, but no family member is mentioned. So I don't know if he's got parents, if he's got siblings, any of that. He also moves a lot. He's 26, and you've already mentioned several places he's been. Japan now, Hawaii. What's he doing in Pennsylvania? Altoona. There's got to be some connection there. And then New York. And didn't we hear that possibly he had come up from Atlanta? So there's something that's keeping him on the move. And but to get back to the health issue of a back problem, where that he cuts his family off. It's an interesting way of putting it. That what did they have to do with? Now, 26, don't forget your health insurance. If you're on your parents' insurance, I think it stops at 26, I think. So I don't know whether
that's true. I think most policies, a parent can only insure their child till about 26 years of age. Someone else pointing out he comes from privilege for sure. He went to a very elite private school. We've got a letter that the private school put out to the school itself. And I'm going to hopefully get to that. There's a lot of elements that the COE is still putting in there on top of monitoring some live news. As far as this, by the way, is, and this is the Twitter profile for him. And if you see, there's a cartoon, him again, shirtless on the right. And then in the middle is that X-ray with the pins in there. Rob D'Amico, we are hearing, and I think you weren't here for this just now. We got a source at STS that knows one of the children of an STS member, knows this person personally, and this person is said to have had a debilitating back injury, which is maybe why we see that X-ray. And after that, basically cut off ties to his family, even moved to Japan for a while. My question to you is, if you have that information, how do you use it in an interview with this guy? Oh, you're muted, Rob.
Sorry. Yeah. So my girlfriend said the same thing, that her daughter knows someone who knows him, and mentioned the back injury. So again, like when you go and interview someone, no matter who they are, and Ann, is interviewed serial killers, and she somehow has found a connection to them, which a lot of people don't understand. But I've interviewed a lot of terrorists overseas, and you find a connection to them. If the terrorists had, kids, I would talk about my kids again to get that connection with them. So if I'm going in here with this one, and just quickly, I'm like, oh yeah, freaking healthcare. Like I got denied too. I had an injury, and it could all be made up, but you just have to have something where when you talk to him, he's got to feel like he wants to talk to you, that you're kind of on his side. And this one I think would be easy because you're just talking about healthcare and a surgery. And I may have healthcare the same way, and I may have had surgeries. The ones that do it to I don't even know how to say it on YouTube, but child predators and murderers. We have agents and police officers that go in and find something to connect with them. And the only reason you're doing it is to get that confession. You come out feeling dirty. You've come out feeling horrible. But there's a purpose to it in the end. So I think this one's easy as far as, but you have to I'd want to talk to, again, profiler or someone like Ann, how's his ego? How do you want to use, this guy's probably got an ego. he made some references to actually the Unabomber being a revolutionary thing. So he thinks he's that. So I would talk to the folks, all right, how do I deal with that ego going into it? How do I get his ego to help me? And then a little bit of empathy on the healthcare stuff and the back surgery type of thing. So you're going to use it all. And these guys that think they're smarter than everyone, they're sometimes easier to roll because they think they're smarter than you, and you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah, interesting. By the way, this now is a live shot, presumably outside the Altoona, PA police department, and there's word that he might be taken for a perp walk. Scott Duffey, before I ask you a question, I just want to give you some of the latest information. He was, of course, taken into custody. It happened Monday morning. Apparently, an elderly citizen recognized him, thought they should call the authorities, which is what they did. And then Altoona PD obviously contacted the NYPD, and the NYPD is on scene there. They know that he took a Greyhound bus into New York City back on November 24th, but they also know that he took a Greyhound bus out toward Altoona. Scott Duffey, what's going on in there? My thinking was that they're going to have this guy in there all night, 3 a.m. Why would he be walking out potentially very soon? We'll keep this shot up.
Yeah. So it could be a couple of different things. It could be that he said, "Hey, I'm not talking," and it's over. And he did what, invoked one of his rights. It could be that he provided a slew of information that with not only with what he has on his person and what's at the crime scene that connects him, that he's like, hey, or law enforcement is saying we can continue this on in a different forum. Which I would be a little hesitant to go that route because, if he's talking, I wouldn't want to stop him, let him, talk all night if necessary. But then, there are logistics. So it's you're talking about New York, would like to have him in New York. It'd be interesting to see if he waives all those extraditions and said, hey, let's get to New York and carry this on. It could be that he made a few statements where he is saying, take me here and I'll continue to give you everything that you need. So you're right. From the moment that we learned he is detained, I don't think anybody was talking to him other than keeping him, maybe chattering until New York arrived, because New York, I'm sure they would want to make sure has that first crack.
By the way, thoughts go out to Aria Dakota Grimaldi Lane, a friend of the show. Did not realize recovering from kidney failure. She's in the UK, and wishing you a very quick recovery. Arraignment at 6 p.m. This is getting more interesting. So, Rob D'Amico, and I've got so much for you. So it's going to be a combo. And then if we need to, we're going to ask you to come back tomorrow again. But Rob D'Amico, an arraignment, that's quick. Walk us through this. I guess he would be arraigned in Altoona. The reading of the charges. What would happen at the arraignment? What would happen post-arraignment?
Well, he's got to be arraigned. But I think, and then there's extradition. So, he can pass that up, knowing that goes through. But now you're just going through the legal process. You can also look at, there's probably federal charges out there, or UFAP, unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. That would go federal. It depends. So they're looking at the easiest way legally to bring him back to New York, but they have to go through all the processes here. Again, you don't want him to have some type of case if something wasn't done right. So you just go through the process and then you figure it out. You have them, and that's the important part. And now you just want to do everything right, so nothing can be questioned or appealed to later on.
This is actually, and this is interesting. I'm going to bring this up, but I got more to cover with the investigation. Mark Rosario. You'll see this was the name on the fake ID. Mario per fake ID. So these are the Mario brother. What is, I don't even know, Mario Brothers, which is the video game. There's a Mario and a Luigi. But this guy had been so thoughtful in the way he went about this, that he would create a fake ID that actually spells out Mario. If you take the first letter and the last 4 letters, is this the kind of thing that profilers look at? It's fascinating, and it's possible, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, and the writing on those bullets, he wants to make a name for himself. When you get into some of the things he says about Ted Kaczynski, which, by the way, we have analyzed his manifesto through AI. So it's going to be very interesting to see if we can get hold of this one's manifesto and compare it. But at any rate, the way he's his hero, Ted Kaczynski. So, and he quotes him quite a bit, and this is where he gets into the violence and into the political issue and so forth. But I really hope that we can watch him walk, because if he had a back injury with those 4 pins that you just showed, he's got to be he could well be in pain. So I want to see if he's going to, there come the dogs.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, yeah, some of the people coming out, I think, are FBI agents. I think we saw them walking. I had seen them walking in before. So they are getting ready to bring him out, it looks like.
Yeah, we're going to keep an eye on this. And obviously, Scott Duffey, they're going to take him straight to court, where he's going to be arraigned at this late hour on the East Coast. It'll be about 6 p.m. East Coast time. Altoona PD, probably not used to the entire world watching the back door of their police station. So, Scott, we know there's an FBI office near there. That says police, so that could very well be an Altoona PD officer. You've got NYPD inside. Forget the questioning right now. And someone said that he's lawyered up. I don't know whether that's true or not. But all of that aside, what's going on outside of the interview right now? You've got multiple FBI agents, presumably, multiple NYPD officers, presumably, and then Altoona PD. The chief is there. What's happening outside the interview room right now?
Yeah, I would imagine that there is quite a crowd of law enforcement, and I would hope that, and I don't know how big Altoona is. I imagine it's a good size, so it could probably get pretty crowded. You are talking about an international flavor to this, where you just had all eyes on this, and so there's a lot of interested parties within the circles of law enforcement. And just to also say, with regards to the arraignment, there is such a thing as called the 6-hour rule. So they have to get him arraigned. I've done arraignments like through video, just if somebody's talking. But that also tells me whether he lawyered up or not, that if he didn't waive that 6-hour rule, that's got to be done before a judge. So yeah, I would say there's a lot going on just outside his interview room within the different halls of that police department.
Yeah, there is a ton going on from all sides here. We're going to try to get you as much of it as possible. For those just tuning in and the first time here, welcome to Surviving the Survivor. It is the podcast that does bring you the very best guests in true crime. It's not a tagline. It is our reality. We literally have the woman who started the business of profiling here, the legend, Dr. Ann Burgess. You've got Rob D'Amico and Scott Duffey, both retired FBI special agents. This is what we do every night here. If you like the show, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. And we've got a Patreon link where we put photos, like all the photos you're seeing here, and links into that Patreon page. And it goes a long way in helping support the content. But Rob D'Amico, back to you. This was an interesting development. Police say when they made the arrest and swooped in, he was with his weapon, and it is a ghost gun that uses 9mm bullets. There was a suppressor, what is more commonly known as a silencer. He had a U.S. passport, 4 fake IDs. One of them of course, is the one right here. I'm going to just put this up for a second with the New Jersey license there. So that's one of the fake IDs. Back to the live. We're looking at a live shot of the Altoona PD. When it comes to a ghost gun, Rob, does that mean that it just doesn't have a serial number, or does it mean that he could have potentially made the gun using something like a 3D printer?
So ghost gun relates to the serial number. So what's happening now is people, the serial numbers on the frame. So they make a frame with a 3D printer in a plastic that can withstand some of the stress of a gun. You can't continually shoot it, but it can stand up for a few rounds. And then you buy parts on the internet that make up that gun that are metal and stuff, but that they don't have serial numbers. So when you put the gun together, technically that gun is non-registered, doesn't have a serial number, can't come back to anyone, because the parts that you buy, say it's the slide, the barrel, all these other things, they don't have serial numbers. Except for some guns like Staccato and stuff, they're so well machined that they have matching serial numbers because that barrel is only good with that gun. But this one you put together, same thing with the suppressor could be a ghost suppressor. So they make real suppressors, but you can make them again from a 3D printer with some other things. There's all kinds of, YouTube videos, and you can put together a suppressor that is good for a few rounds. And I think that's why you're looking at a gun that malfunctioned 3 times in 3 shots, because again, it's not a highly tuned gun. It's thrown together. The chamber pressure might not have been right because the plastic he used to build, to print that gun didn't hold the chamber pressure, and all these other things that happen. But he probably shot it a couple times because, as I talked about the first day, he immediately went to after action to clear that malfunction. It's not like he was surprised at malfunction. So I think he might have shot it 1 or 2 times before and saw that there's some problems, but it still shot rounds if he could function the weapon. So I don't think you can do an entire 3D printing of a gun, because again, the chamber pressure, the barrels and stuff like that, but printing the one that doesn't have the serial number is really kind of what defines, quote, ghost gun.
Yeah. And Rob, I got to just follow up there. I mean, how surprised are you that a guy this smart would be at a McDonald's with his weapon on him, with the 4 IDs on him? We don't know if it was on his person or a backpack, but it seems like a real fatal error on his part.
As I said earlier, like criminals surprise you on sometimes how clever they are, and then 2 seconds later how stupid they are. It's one of those things, like the biggest thing he had on him that's going to connect him to the crime is that gun. Like if he got off in Altoona, as we talked about earlier, there's plenty of rivers to walk by and ditch that thing. Someone had made a comment, well, maybe he was planning on doing something else with it. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be all kinds of things in there, but to have the manifesto on you, the ID that you used for the hostel that you knew that they're going to come back to, and the gun, sounds to me like he was anticipating this, and he wants his ego wants this to be known to a point. So I can't imagine anyone intelligently having all those things on them, not thinking it's going to come back to him and not going to tie him to the crime, because that gun is the key. I mean, everything else will support it, but having that gun on him, that's going to be hard to get over.
Yeah, we are looking at live pictures courtesy of Fox News Digital of the back door to the Altoona Police Department. I swear every news photographer in the country looks the same, but that is definitely a news photographer. And we're waiting for Luigi Mangione. His arraignment is set to be taking place in about 24 minutes. There's a sign that it could be happening. A police car just driving by, or it could just be a sign that's a police department. But in any event, he is scheduled to be arraigned. And I'm going to put this up real quick so we don't miss this shot. But this is from LinkedIn, and he's got, for a 26-year-old kid, he's got a pretty extensive career history going on. You can see he was part of Phi Kappa Psi fraternity. That's all the way on the right. He's got awards. He was cum laude, which is with honors at the University of Pennsylvania. A data engineer. It says here in the middle, he worked for a company called true car. They went to his working space there, spoke to someone in Honolulu, not in California, who said that there was nothing strange about him. And then he was, obviously very smart, working as a head counselor on an artificial intelligence project.
Yeah.
Again, he's also valedictorian of a place called the Gilman School, or Gilman School without the in Baltimore, which is, I read, about $40,000 a year tuition. Great school, a lot of money, even better university, comes from privilege. Does that surprise you in terms of a profile?
No, that doesn't surprise me, given our serial killers and how bright they were. But he is very accomplished. What's different there is as you've read off, there's a lot of impressive work that he's done, and evidently it's justified. Penn I taught at Penn for 17 years, so I know they have very high standards. So he must have passed everything that he should have, and gets into a fraternity. So he's not a loner, so to speak, and he is in gaming. That's the other interesting thing. You had asked a question earlier about the name. It looks like he makes up the fake IDs, and then he twists them to his own little special secret language, I guess. Maybe not so secret that people are able to decode it. But all of these things take a lot of thought and a lot of time, and he does it very quickly. So I think you have to be impressed with what he has done and why we have. This is a very different type of offender, more like Kaczynski.
Yeah. There's a question for you, Ann. What does the literature research and your research say about these vigilantes? Ann has a book, by the way, Killer by Design, who commit crimes. Have they been studied as to what motivates them, or is it just pure ego? It sounds like a real bad back injury, and his dislike for the insurance system is what motivated this. But what do you say to this question?
Right. I want to know how long ago was that injury? Maybe that was since he had been at doing all these other things that you just listed. How he got it, be very important to know how that injury happened. It's in the lower back, and those pins look pretty, you can get a lot of problems with pins. So he could well be in a lot of pain, but maybe not. If he's on drugs, I want to know if he's on certain kinds of pain medications.
Yeah. By the way, here, this is a comment that's going to anger some people, but I agree with it. Damn, just a kid, really. He is 26. When I was 26, I was just a kid. You make a lot of dumb mistakes, but this mistake is going to cost him more than likely his freedom for the rest of his life. And I'm always asking guys like Rob D'Amico and Scott Duffey, why would you make such a dumb mistake for such a smart kid? He could have done good in many other ways. Obviously, a very bright mind. Now there's a good chance this guy is going to be in a supermax prison, maybe even taking up his hero, the Unabomber's old cell, or at a state prison. But either way, it is not going to be a pleasant future for him. Scott Duffey, in terms of the apprehension strategy on a case this high profile, Altoona PD gets a call from someone there, presumably a senior citizen. That's what we hear. And they say, hey, I think someone's here that might be that guy in New York. How do you approach the McDonald's?
Yeah, so law enforcement across the country probably is receiving some sort of a call here and there, because you put this guy out there and then you realize, wow, there's a lot of lookalikes out there, especially with what we've seen through the public dissemination of photos. So I would believe, and it could change with any department, a city department, a rural department, how much experience does a patrol officer who's actually arriving, that there is some consideration to arriving on that scene. So you're talking about, is it possible police officers like, yeah, okay, I'll go and check this out with the mindset that this is going to be an impossible, it's not going to be, and then arrives on scene. And so I would assume here you have at least 2, if not more, police officers, but also enough police officers, just enough to be able to not scare him. If he's inside at a window looking at the parking lot, do you want somebody that's just going to get up and beat foot? So it'd be interesting to see, as I'm sure it will come out in the next day or two, what was that initial approach and what was his reaction. He knows that he had possession of a weapon, possession of incriminating evidence that would immediately tie him back to the crime scene. Everyone else is just assuming, hey, this is a lookalike call, and how many we don't know have actually gone to police departments. The fact that he had this, it would be interesting to see if he was asked to provide ID, if he provided ID of his true name or a false name, expecting law enforcement just to say, okay, buddy, hit the road. It really could have gone a different way if he did not have anything with him, had his legitimate ID, and I think at most law enforcement, my guess is his ability, his charm, his ability to talk himself out. Law enforcement would have said, okay, I'm going to take down this information and then send you on your way and do a follow-up. That's what could have happened, and that and send him further into a more of an underground. But here, he had everything, and so law enforcement, my belief is, quickly learned that this individual is not just a lookalike call-in, but the real deal. And law enforcement said, we got to make sure we do this right.
Yeah, by the way, we're waiting on him to come out. That would be Luigi Mangione. But again, this is, real quick, the ID on the right. He used this fake New Jersey ID. I mean, Rob D'Amico, it looks like the photo is him. Do you think the photo is him? He just changed the name here?
Yeah, I think so. He's probably one of those kids that made the fake IDs and collars that you bought for $50. Yeah, and who knows how he did it and stuff. But again, like, you get the Photoshop and the printers and stuff. It's easy enough to make one that appeared to be fine to the hostel in New York, but a police officer's going to kind of see through it, going to run it, type of thing. And it is interesting, as Scott said, when they talked to him, did he try to present that ID? That would have been so dumb, to present ID that he used for the hostel in New York to the police officers. Or did they find those IDs later when his story came? Probably asked him, hey, what are you doing? Like, and as a cop talks to you and it doesn't make sense, like, what are you doing in Altoona? You from here? Type of things to get him to talk. And if he starts stammering, with these questions that the answers that don't make sense, you start digging in a little more. If he just came flat out and gave him that ID, and they saw it, and a police officer can tell a fake ID, especially now with all the holograms and stuff that they put in it. It may work at a college bar, but not to a police officer who can also have it run, so to speak. And then that's when they found the other stuff. And as we talked about, as things got more suspicious and they decided to talk to him downtown, then that's when you do the Terry stop search. So you're allowed to frisk somebody, pat them down to make sure they don't have weapons, so you don't get hurt if you're going to put them in the car. And then all of a sudden you feel a gun. And that's when things start changing a bit with this whole thing. After they found the gun, they may have grabbed his bag and also looked in that, or he voluntarily gave something. Looking in the bag, you have to go back and forth if that's legal under the Fourth Amendment, because you can't get a weapon that's in the bag. But the gun, if it was in his pants pocket and they pat him down real quick and felt it, that's a very easy Terry stop. That's going to be admissible. So that whole interaction can take a lot of, it can be very important to the case, because the gun's important, the IDs are important. How did they actually take them from that person? If he voluntarily gave them over, it's not quite an issue, but you can get into some Fourth Amendment things right there on the spot. That's why a police officer has to know those important things that Scott talked about.
Yeah, if you're new to the show, by the way, the COE runs the show behind the scenes, the chief of everything, aka my wife, who's also a former network news correspondent. Space Coast on the West Coast is getting us all the information. Steve Cohen, the best booker in the business, former network news broadcast Booker, and you got the most amazing mods. I'm going to bring this shot back up. The COE's got video, Ann, of his valedictorian speech, which we can play a couple of minutes of, but I don't want to miss this. So we're going to bring that up. If there is an arraignment at 6, I can't keep the guests all night. We're probably going to go long, but maybe rotate guests in at 7 o'clock, unless, of course, they want to stick around a little bit longer. But we're going to play this all by ear as we go. Thank you to Josephine. The super chats go a long way. Here's thank you, Ollie, for gifting some memberships. This is a question for both Scott and Ann. First, from an investigative standpoint, Scott Duffey. This was not the question I was going to ask, but we'll go with it. It's a different comment. But Scott, what about this? I mean, Rob was just talking about it. If he did not have the gun on him, would they have been caught between a rock and a hard place? Would they have had to let him go? Would they have just had to keep eyes on him?
Yeah. So I think I can first say, wow, to those patrol officers, because that's who was arriving. I mean, that's just fantastic police work. And that's why I'm really interested to see what queued them up. And so what we have today is he's in custody, and New York feels very comfortable to say that's our guy. So law enforcement is arriving, and they're just doing in a very public place. I imagine he was still at the McDonald's, not walking away. But either way, does he remain calm? Does he just have a conversation? And so law enforcement is looking for things that are able to say, I detained him as a result of this. First and foremost, they're going to, because everybody's looking for him, so they can lay eyes on himself and say, yeah, you do look like the guy that New York is looking for. You can have a joking conversation. Hey, has anybody else said that you look like that guy? And just allow that conversation to kind of allow law enforcement to be watching him, seeing if he's making any furtive movements, and is he grabbing things? And did he, they're going to ask, do you have ID? Was ID provided? What name was provided? And they're able to do checks. Hey, we're doing a lawful detention and an investigative stop, and somebody called you in. And so does he right away go for something if the gun is on his person, and therefore law enforcement quickly secured him and found a weapon? Or does he just kind of play off? So that I'd be very interested to see how this conversation went. But ultimately, if he didn't have that weapon, if he did not have those false IDs or didn't give it to them, and he gave them a legitimate ID, and they're able to run it, and he has no wants, no warrants, he's not wanted anywhere, they don't have necessarily right. They can ask, hey, can we take you back to the police department to fingerprint you? Sure, you could do all that, but if he said no and provided them with everything that they had asked, I would think it could be a different outcome.
Yeah, this is Brian Yennis with he's a reporter with Fox News I used to work with, real good guy and a good street reporter. He's already out in Altoona along with the NYPD. Obviously, he's getting ready to do a live shot. If he does go live here, I'm going to try to listen in. It looks like he's getting ready to do exactly that. So COE, if you see him going, and I'm going to keep an eye on it, that's again, Brian Yennis. The lighting is horrible. The COE would be yelling about that, a little too blue. Let me just see if he's COE. Can you unmute that, please?
At 9876-5432.
All right, he's just doing an audio check, but we're going to come back to him to see what he has to say, because he's on the ground there. Again, Brian Yennis with Fox News. So a question that I wanted to ask for both investigators and Anna and Rob, I'm going to go to you for this one. Do you want to know at this point why he chose this particular CEO? You and I were talking about how people are putting these hit lists out already. There's so many other CEOs. I think he's one of the lowest paid. I mean, albeit $10 million a year with bonuses. But do you want to know why he chose this guy specifically over the others? Then same question for Ann afterwards.
I mean, that'd be part of it. Wouldn't be my first question. It could be something as simple as he saw an article because of, he dumped stock and made a bunch of money, on that. It could be he researched other ones, and this one was more vulnerable with actually, his meeting being data leakage on it. They say they didn't advertise it, but I don't trust the company saying that they first everyone said he didn't have security. Then all of a sudden the company said he did have security, but he wasn't with them. I think there's a lot of cover your butt going on with that company, because I think they're liable if they knew he had threats. I would be interested to see if the threats came from this guy. I would think they would, but this healthcare guy could have been getting threats from a whole bunch of people who denied coverage. I would want to kind of understand his picking of this one, but it could have been he checked several out, and this guy was just more vulnerable, that he could get his schedule. It could have been something that he saw online, that this guy just dumped a bunch of stock and made money, and he's also I've seen something about him being the one that brought in AI so that they could deny more claims. I don't know if that's internet garbage, or if it's actually true or something, but something got his attention to him. And then again, it could have been he had several CEOs under the radar, and this one turned out to be more presentable in for what he wanted to do.
Yeah. By the way, a comment, and I'm checking it appears to be accurate, that and it's right here. CNN's reporting his family owns a company called Lorien Health Systems, and Burgess. That's interesting in and of itself. It's an assisted living facility in the Baltimore area. They've got 8 locations. That's a big business that deals with insurance companies for assisted living. How does that play into the whole equation? And you heard earlier that people who know him said he cut his family off.
Right. I think it plays in. This is a very bright person, so he has done some research. I don't think it was just from whatever the reason is. I think UnitedHealthcare has something to do with either his health care or something with the family, that he cut the family off, or the family cut him off. I would wonder which way it went. Something has gone on with the healthcare system, if you will, between his family and insurance. So I think we're going to have to wait and see what that is. But there is a grievance there, and it's two very, very deep grievance for him to be pushed to violence. One of the things he says on the Kaczynski part is you can have communications, and when communications feel violence is justified.
Scott Duffey, and it looks like D'Amico had to jump off. The guy does media every 5 seconds, but he knows that Surviving the Survivor is the place. So he comes back. But Scott Duffey, who also does a ton of media, is here, and we appreciate it very much. In terms of, this is the 6th day, Scott Duffey, of this manhunt. It started Wednesday morning at 6:45 a.m., and today is Monday. So in your interview process, and you've been in that interview many, many times, and it looks like they're getting ready to bring him out here. So let's see. COE, can we listen? That's him popping out of the car. COE, get the volume up, please.
So it looks like they're at the courthouse.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So we did not see him come out of the PD.
Correct. We saw him going into the courthouse. You are correct.
That's a good PD.
Yeah. So it looks like they just took him in. Obviously, he did not say a word right there. This is crazy to me. How is this possible that not a single reporter asked a question? That's my world. That's an embarrassment to the media profession right there. But Scott Duffey, you just saw him with your own eyes, and we'll get the COE to replay that in a moment. Scott, I mean, he's going in to be arraigned right now. First of all, how long should this arraignment take? What do you think bail or bond will be set at here?
Yeah, it's I can tell you, being in PA and whatnot, the arraignment won't take that long. It can take a few minutes, up to maybe 15 minutes at most, and that's just with the judge. Remember, he's not being arraigned on anything in New York. I would bet to say that. I think they are extradition charges, so he can waive that extradition, whatever charges he's facing as a result of providing law enforcement with false ID. And that's a distinction between having them in possession and never using them, and then presenting them to law enforcement. There's two different types of charges there. And then, of course, the weapon. So you have a host of PA charges, which I imagine that's what he's being arraigned on. And then, of course, the fugitive from another state. New York is going to put charges on him if they haven't already done so. So this way, if
here we go. This is this is them bringing him out just moments ago. That is Luigi Mangione, the man they think committed this crime, being escorted in by Altoona PD here. Yes, this would just be for the gun charge, I believe, which is what Scott was just saying. Yes, he was going into the courthouse, not leaving the PD. So he was the media gaggle. Amazing that no one asked a question unless they have him at a really distant perimeter. But typically they would scream questions out. And I never got back to you on the question I asked Scott and or Rob, which is why this CEO? From your perspective, how important is that? What does it tell you? He was the one making the least, believe it or not. There's some of these CEOs are making 36 to 40 million a year. He was making 10 million with bonuses with a base salary of $1 million. So do you want to find out why he chose who he did?
Right. So it may not be he as an individual, but it may be he as a CEO of the company, of the insurance company. And so there's something that it is the grievance falls onto that. Was he denied? And he would go for the top person. I think that matches his personality. If he's going to go to the top, going to get the very best, if you will. He did that with his education and the way the other thing is the AI piece. You did mention that AI piece, and that's his area of specialty. So that could have played a factor in it. Did he not think that they should have used it, or they should have used it, or whatever it is? It might be the AI.
Yeah, by the way, apologies to Rob and Scott, but when you got a living legend, you got to go back to her. What about the fact now that it was a shot to the back? You know, I had guys like Rob D'Amico on saying if he was hired to do the hit, which he doesn't do, but he's a trained killer, Rob D'Amico, he would just shoot you in the back of the head from 2 inches away. This guy shot him in the back, which is reportedly where he's injured and suffering. Is that a sign or a symbol or crying out for help? Ann.
Well, yes, I think that now that we know about the back injury, absolutely. We've got to find out how he had his back injury and what that all means. But that I think that it is symbolic.
Yeah. I think I read in the chat.
Yeah, he got
surfing. Someone laughed. They're like, "Oh yeah, he's surfing and hurt his back." Don't know if it's true, but I've seen it a couple times. But again, some rich sport surfing hurts his back, not picking up bricks.
Oh, okay. So it's not all right.
I'm sorry, Ann, but Rob, to you, how soon into this interview do you want to find out or ask him, what have you been doing the last 5.5 days? Where were you? Do you care about that? And do investigators now have to go back out to these different possible stops that he made to look for evidence or speak to people?
So it depends on the interview. The pirate, we'll take the pirate in Somalia I interviewed. We did not want to drop the piracy on the U.S. ship right when we met him. So we started talking to him about his travels and some other things, just getting him to speak. So we went over that, and that helped us later on and some things. A lot of times when you go in there, you don't... some of these ones that write down, like, the military was so formal because of some of the things that happened with interrogations, and their interrogators had to write these outlines of what they're going to interview. And then they, like, when the FBI went in, they're like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to base it off of him or her, because you have to take from that. You have to listen to see where they want to go. If he wants to talk about what he did to stay away from the crime, so to speak, you let him do that. You don't let him get quiet. You keep him talking. And if he wants to shy away from something, you kind of note that, and you kind of come back at it another way through a connection. You don't push it. You don't force it at this point. And then, at one point you may delve into it and see how he reacts, and then you back off, and then you go in. But every interviewer has their own style. And you can't really, I always say, when you try to fake who you are in an interview, they see that quicker than most, they see it quicker, and then it's not who you are. And then you got to kind of apologize for it. I go in as I am. And I'm just very open and blunt, because that's who I am. I want them to see that. And then some people just do it totally different. That's why having two people, I remember, like on the Pirate, is me and Brian Malachewski. We just had very different personalities. I would do really well, and then I kind of slow down, and then Brian would come in, have a whole different way, and kind of trick them up. I don't want to say trick them up, but had a different rapport with them that went one way, and then it went back to me. So if you're good, you let them go, and then you touch into something. And if he's willing to buy it, if he's talking, he may have just, like I said, someone asked for the lawyer. It can happen. And then you got to really just kind of not talk to him anymore.
Yeah. Scott Duffey, from an investigative standpoint, on top of the 4 IDs, on top of the ghost gun that they find, they also retrieve a 2.5-page handwritten manifesto, which of course is going to be very interesting to Ann as well. But first to you, from an investigative standpoint, you're obviously going to be looking at, what he's talking about and who he's speaking of. There's a quote in the manifesto that says, "These parasites had it coming," probably referring to insurance executives. How do you approach that in terms of questioning, a line of questioning about the manifesto that he has written without angering him? By the way, we should add, some people are saying that he lawyered up, so some of these questions might not be asked at all. So, Scott, what about that in terms of a line of questioning with a manifesto?
Yeah, so you first and foremost start with however law enforcement recovered it. Was he actively working on it? Was it in his backpack or whatever he had with him? And then ultimately, they made a decision to detain and further investigate at the police department and make an initial arrest, and going back to the police department, thereby you have searched into an arrest, so everything comes out. And then it would just be a casual conversation. Hey, are these your writings? Is this something that you've come across? What I would get him to do the talking of what it is, either owning it first and foremost. Yeah, that's my writing. That's a good thing, because there could be, and I don't, unless I've missed it, has it been published? Is it out there for public consumption?
Not that, I mean, bits and pieces. He did add, by the way, and I'll get Ann's take on this too, but Scott, he adds in the manifesto, "I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done."
Yeah.
Would you ask him? I mean, so why did you feel you had to do it? I mean, is that a question?
Well, I'd like that it's a sense of duty. So a sense of duty, as opposed to people that I've talked to have done something, and thereby there's a remorse. So I can exploit that. And so here, a sense of duty is not going to be a sense, I had to do it. It's not going to be so much of a remorse. So it would be going more with, okay, let's tell me why you feel you had to do it, and just allow at this point is getting him to talk and feeling like, okay, I have an audience, even if it's just you and your partner. Hey, start writing, start recording. I mean, the whole idea is that I do believe he was doing things, leaving these breadcrumbs to be found. If he wasn't planning a secondary homicide of a like individual, I don't think he was looking to get away and disappear. It does seem that he was waiting, and so thereby I would be using that to say, we can record now. I'll put a video on, and all the major stations can carry this at the 6 o'clock news if that's what you want. I would be more or less going with what is it that you want, and do you have additional things to say? Let's get it off let's get those words off the page of that paper and get it out into the airways. That's the way I would be exploiting that.
Yeah. Rob D'Amico, to you. You were discussing this earlier, but a follow-up about probable cause. So what is the probable cause to just go into a McDonald's to search this person? Question number one. I'll stop it there.
We don't know if they searched him or if he volunteered. Like, again, they're talking to him. He does something that gets suspicious, and then you're going to take him in. Like, if hey, do you have an ID? And he pulls out the fake one, and they figure out it's a fake one. Like, hey, this is a fake ID. And then they talk about, as soon as they talk about bringing him down to the police station, you got to pat him down. Or if for their safety, if for some reason they felt unsafe, you can pat someone down in a Terry search, because there's Terry against Ohio is the Supreme Court, that you can pat him down for a weapon. You can't, like, if you pat his pocket and you don't feel a weapon, you can't go looking in his pocket for paper or something. That's more intrusive of what your Terry search is allowed. But they could have said, do you mind if we look in your backpack? If he does consent and he says, yeah, sure. Like, a lot of people that, are guilty want to appear innocent. So they'll say, yeah, you can, you can search my backpack, and that's a consensual search. And if they have it on, if they're wearing body cams, that's a record of that consensual search. It's I had a case when I was undercover, and I had a cop ask me, I was with 3 mob guys. We just came out of a nightclub bar, and they didn't know me. The other 3 mob guys were all made guys, and they wanted to figure out who I was. They came up to the car. They made some, thing. I didn't use my signal. And they said, hey, do you mind if we search your car? And I said, yeah, actually I do. And he like, well, get out. I said, no, I said, I don't want you searching it. And then they said, well, we can get a dog. And I said, well, how long is it going to take a dog to come here? And what's your probable cause for holding me 45 minutes for your dog to come up? And he literally threw my ID back at me so hard it cut my face. And he goes, your mob lawyer tell you what to say? And I said, yeah. Little did he know he's talking to an FBI agent that was, playing a mobster. But understanding those things, like, that's where the patrolmen have to understand what they're allowed to do in that place. If they forced it, if they just looked in his backpack and it was separated from him, and they didn't, like, there was no way he could get a gun out of it, that's going to come up as, was that search admissible to find that? There's a couple cases where you can say, well, we're going to bring them in anyhow. We're going to have to inventory that bag. We would have found it anyhow. But that's when you get into some real lawyering in that. Hopefully they asked for consent and he opened his backpack, or if he gave him the fake ID to see that this is who I was, that's, again, consensual to a point. He wasn't detained at that point. And then the pat down to find the weapon is probably how they found it. And that's allowed in a Terry search if they just wanted to be safe, or if they're going to put him in the car, they need to pat him down to make sure he doesn't have any weapons, bring it to the police station. So that will be interesting to see how that went, because it can be very, very important to the case later on.
This is the mugshot of Luigi Mangione, the 26-year-old who NYPD says is responsible for shooting and killing the CEO of UnitedHealthcare.
I want to know what Ann says about that photo.
Exactly.
I want to ask your guests.
That's exactly where I was going, Rob. And what do you see here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, he's not smiling. It's the first time we've seen him not smiling. But he has this mission. I think Scott talked about this, and so he had that air when he got out of the car and just walked with one of your people in the show said that his nose is still in the air, and in a way, he does hold his head up. There's not any bowing of the head or anything like that. He's very much in command of himself. I'm not sure he's going to be talking much initially to because if he follows what Ted Kaczynski did, don't forget they had to publish that manifesto in 2 separate newspapers, and Kaczynski was caught by the brother who identified his writing and his style. So that manifesto that he wrote, 3.5 pages or whatever, is going to be really, really key to telling what's going on in his head and what he planned.
Yeah, it's I think it was 2.5 handwritten pages.
Yeah.
You've got the words defiance that come to mind. Same scarf, good point. Different jacket. He's got multiple layers. You had to think that he was very layered up. Yeah, and again, this is a kid that comes from privilege. Went to a $40,000 a year private school. I think we've got a letter and also a valedictorian speech. We haven't heard him speak, so it'd be interesting.
Right.
COE, if we can bring that up. I know Anne would enjoy hearing that, and people would be interested in that. I work at UnitedHealthcare. Nice job, and thank you, Mike. Condolences to everyone at the company, and of course, Brian Thompson, the CEO, is said to have been laid to rest today. Appreciate the super chat. Again, this is the mugshot just released of Luigi Mangione. Scott Duffey, back to you. Rob was just talking about the probable cause. We don't know what bail was set at yet. I have a feeling it is going to be an enormous amount. By the way, just on that note, Scott, I mean, how much discretion does a judge in a place like Altoona have to set a very high bail? Because this is the kind of thing where his family can probably get him out pretty easily if it's reasonable.
Yeah, I can tell you that no judge wants to have his or her name on any type of bail that was made, and that subject is, and then ultimately, let's just say there are good things that are happening in the sense of this is why the FBI would be involved. So let's just say the judge said $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is, put a price on it. And the family wants to meet that. And then that triggers the UFAP warrant that Rob was talking about, that the FBI can put as a detainer, and thereby he could not get out. So there are things in place that I imagine to ensure that he can make bail on that, but there's going to be no bail associated with the UFAP if that's in fact what they had to use.
What's the UFAP? What is that?
So UFAP is called the unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. And there has to be a charge in New York. So New York would have had to trigger that UFAP warrant with actual charge, not just saying he's our guy, but the fact that they would put in a probable cause warrant in NCIC, that is that national database, that law enforcement database, and thereby FBI can have that in place if they felt like, hey, we don't want him falling through any crack in or loophole, and him being able to make bail.
We're going to get back to Ann in a second with this question, so let's leave it up by Jenny Allison, who's a friend of the show. But Rob D'Amico, how soon before this guy's back in New York City, and how do they take him back? Via helicopter?
No, they'll drive him back. You don't waste a helicopter on him after that. Plus, so they'll drive him back. I think it'll be shortly. It depends if it's a local charge and he's fighting extradition or something like that, or if they in fact do the federal charge on the UFAP, they'll have to get him in front of a federal prosecutor there and then bring him back, type of thing. So they'll figure it out, but I'd say no later than the end of the week. And he may know he's going back there, and that's why a lot of them just don't fight the extradition back.
Yeah. By the way, Scott Duffey, he's from Towson, Maryland, which is a university, town. Someone's asking, Cat Coco, thank you for the super chat, but I want to leave this comment up for Ann. If he has a lawyer, would his lawyer need to be at the arraignment? I mean, I guess you could have gotten a local Altoona attorney, but maybe he would want a family attorney from the Towson area. What about that? Could a lawyer potentially just have zoomed in a post-COVID world? Scott Duffey.
Is that for Scott?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Scott, about the fact that would his attorney need to be there in person for this arraignment?
Oh yeah, no, I would imagine that, no, he wouldn't, or she wouldn't, whoever the attorney is and wherever they're coming from. He with this level of attention, I have done when I was in Pennsylvania, I've done my own arraignments before our local DJ. And if there's a level of, hey, this is, I don't want to screw this up, I can bet a prosecutor has been there. Ultimately, what the judge is going to do is saying, these are the charges. And he's going to remind him of his rights to have an attorney, to be appointed attorney, so he's going to go through all that, or the judge is going to go through all that. And so no defense attorney is needed at arraignment, because there's nothing there other than a statement of charges. And then he'll be remanded back to the custody of whatever the officials, the correctional facility up there. And then and he may even do an immediate waiver. Hey, I don't want to stick around here. Let's get to New York. And New York could be in the background saying, Your Honor, we're ready to go. If Pennsylvania authorities are going to provide us with the necessary vehicle to ensure that a safe passage, we're ready to take them. So all of that can be worked out in the arraignment.
Yeah. By the way, Mary with an interesting comment, but I want to leave this one up. The way this guy was running and bicycling in New York City does not look like he was in that much pain. It's true. He ran across the street after the shooting. Finally, to Jenny Allison for Dr. Burgess. Do you see him as having psychopathy or a personality disorder in order to commit this heinous of a crime? And before you answer that, real quick, imagine a society. This is what Ted Kaczynski. David was a brother, turned him in. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. And this is what Luigi was reading and liking online. Ted Kaczynski wrote, imagine a society that subjects people to conditions that make them terribly unhappy, then gives them the drugs to take away their unhappiness. He goes on and on about it, but that line is eerie in light of what happened. But back to Jenny's question about psychopathy, sociopathy. How do you see it at this juncture?
Yeah, I think this is all really going to get more information as we get hold of that manifesto and what his thinking is. Don't forget, it's the thoughts that drive the behavior. So what is the thoughts that pushed him into this horrific act, and that he felt he could do it and get away with it? Now, part of when we watched him in the shooter, he was very calm. He was able to fire off two shots, I guess it was, and with accuracy, and then managed to very quickly get to an area where for the next 5 days or 6 days, nobody could find him. So the psychopathy, it's not like he's disorganized and hadn't planned this. He's very, very clear on that mission. I would say more a personality disorder than psychopathic because of his background. He's been able to be very successful in college and in a job, it looks like. However, we'd want to see, those are going to be important things to get, is how did he function at wherever this new place was? And he's not at work. How did he leave it at work? The whole issue has been coming up from some of your followers, that did he want to be caught? If he is like Ted Kaczynski, he wanted his message out. And so he was going to somehow just wait and have somebody recognize him. That could well be where he's at that point.
All very fascinating. You're hearing from a legend of profiling in real time, revolving around a person that is now going to be more than likely a convicted, infamous killer, even though we're in the very early stages. One other question for Ann, then back to the investigation. Does the panel, Ann, think that this is life in prison martyrdom, or a plan versus being unalived by police? Did he want to become a quote unquote martyr here?
Yeah, it's interesting that thought, I think, certainly crossed my mind. Is that what he's pushing for, or is it something else? But at any rate, you just put up on the screen the school that he went to, and they have made their they've said that talking about him, and it's distressing news, of course. And let's see, and what people can do, media requests, etc. And they're going to remain. So that's the Gilman's community responding. I'm waiting to see what Penn is going to say.
Yeah, Penn hasn't responded yet. Rob D'Amico, this is the headmaster at this Gilman School. We're going to get right to it, COE, I promise. Or maybe not right to it, but COE's got the valedictorian speech up and queued up. He was the number one in his class of an elite school here. Rob D'Amico, this is from the headmaster. We recently became aware that the person arrested in connection with the killing of the UnitedHealthcare CEO is a Gilman alumnus, Luigi Mangione, class of 2016. We do not have any information other than what is being reported in the news. This is deeply distressing news on top of an already awful situation. Our hearts go out to everyone affected. Media requests are being handled by Stacy Hedeman, Gilman's director of marketing. Boy, she's going to be busy. Here on campus, our focus will remain on caring for and educating the boys. Thank you for your understanding, Henry, whatever his last name is. Rob D'Amico, getting word right now that he has literally not said a word. He just hasn't spoken. What do you do there, Rob? I mean, he except maybe to indicate that he wanted an attorney, but people online are saying he has literally not uttered a word yet.
Well, I mean, that's if you ask me, I mean, that's a smart thing to do. Most people get themselves in trouble when they start talking. But I don't want to tell crooks not to talk unless they're, innocent. So it's like, again, I think he has enough intelligence to understand what his rights are, that he probably shouldn't talk without an attorney. Again, it's when did he ask it? When did he, was it implied? Did he just not say anything? If he didn't ask for an attorney and he's just not talking, you can still talk to him. If he asks for an attorney, then you really basically have to stop asking him and talking to him questions. If he says anything at an utterance, you can use that. Or if he comes back later and says he wants to talk, then you have to get him to go through some paperwork to say that he's understandingly giving his right up to counsel and stuff. A couple of cases, again, I had one say, do you think I need an attorney? I'd already gotten enough information from him that I didn't want to push it. And I looked at him and said, are you asking for an attorney? And he said, yes, because again, I had the statements I needed. We read him as Miranda, but at one point when it got serious, he said, do you think I need an attorney? To me, I had enough. I wasn't going to push it. Some officers would say that wasn't a quote, an outright request for an attorney. I think the courts would have seen it as it was. But that's dependent on the judge at times too. So he probably just not talking. He already got the fame that he wants. He knew that the manifest would come out and probably get leaked. So it is hard though at times to understand what they're thinking. Again, why he was in McDonald's at this point. I still can't, comprehend with all those people looking for him.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. But like you say, Rob, criminals are smart 1 minute.
I would definitely would have gone for pizza though. If I'm having like some pizza, I was on this carnivore diet and I'm like dying for pizza. I want to go to Frank's and get my white pizza type of thing. But McDonald's, I'm like, God, really? Pizza? Yeah.
Web fan here. Everyone's going to chime in. I don't think he is arrogant on that second mugshot. Looks on that 1 second mugshot. Looks tired yet defiant and ready for his GQ cover. I can tell you already. He is, by the way, he's trending all over Twitter, and he already has a lot of female fans out there. I'm sure other fans as well, because of the looks, because of the physique. This is the guy who is now in custody. That is Luigi Mangione. We do have some of his valedictorian speech. I want to play that, a couple more things, and then we will slowly wrap it up. But here is his valedictorian speech from the Gilman School back in 2016, the same year D'Amico and Duffey graduated high school. Here you go. Ironically, here you go.
All set. Congratulations. Thank you. Headmaster Smythe, Mr. Hubeck, members of the Board of Trustees, family, friends, faculty, and fellow students, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here to celebrate Gilman's 116th Founders Day. I'm honored to be speaking to you all today on behalf of the Gilman class of 2016. When I started writing the speech, I talked with several students and teachers and asked how they would describe the class of 2016. Many of the students characterized our class as inventive, in both imagination and initiative. At the same time, several teachers reminded me of our class's commitment to Gilman and its traditions. I came to realize that both views are correct. The class of 2016 is truly defined by its inventive, pioneering mentality that accompanies a strong commitment to Gilman tradition. Throughout its time here at Gilman, the class of 2016 has been coming up with new ideas and challenging the world around it. Our selling of Chick-fil-A during lunch, arguably the staple of our class, provides a great example. In our sophomore year, when brainstorming ways to fundraise, we didn't just settle for the usual methods of selling spirit shirts and Christmas trees. In addition to this, we did what seemed impossible given the tight schedule of the school day and began shuttling dozens of Chick-fil-A sandwiches to Gilman between assembly and lunch. Soon, we were selling over 100 Chick-fil-A sandwiches each day, and what became likely one of the most successful class fundraisers in Gilman's history. But our ability to come up with new ideas didn't start then. I've noticed it as long as I've been here. Even in my very...
Well, there you go. That's a clip. I know Ann wants to hear the whole thing, and I'll get it to her. But Ann, what you hear his voice, obviously, right there. Lorna McKenzie saying, "I bet he's in shock." It's amazing. I've been doing it all wrong, D'Amico. I got to eat Chick-fil-A and McDonald's to get a ripped six-pack, but it's harder to do at my age.
Someone had mentioned that they thought they were photoshopped, so I'm going to go with that one. I'm gonna have to figure that out because I need some abs, so I might as well get better at Photoshop than stop drinking bourbon and eating pizza.
And what do you make of hearing that voice? And he was talking about a fundraiser. I mean, you got to think, and I'll bring it up. Not to make this personal in any way, but my senior year of high school, my principal was murdered. Rest in peace. Mr. Donahue, William Donahue. He was stabbed by his girlfriend's boyfriend. And it was all over, all over the news. And no one really knew this guy because he had graduated. But it's so weird because we all were impacted by it. So when I watch this, and I am going to mute it, you got to think all these people there are now saying, I cannot believe Luigi did this. But what do you make of how he sounded, the way he was delivering things? Is there anything that caught your eye?
Well, first of all, he talks about new ideas. And if you look at some of the other things he's written, he really wanted to be, that fits as far as I'm concerned with his need to be unique, to be out there, to have new ideas. I think someplace he says all the ideas have already been solved in one of his statements that is in the manifesto. But the walkout, he was very, very focused, came in, knew where his notes were, and does everything right. does all of the, as you'd expect, someone valedictorian. So that's all good. And it makes you wonder if this new way of viewing the world is at that age when he's 2016, when he's about, I guess, 17, 18 years old. And what happened between there and where he's now at 25, 26. Because he's doing everything. He certainly doesn't look like a psychopath or look like someone that's trying to get away with something. He looks like, a young valedictorian giving his speech, which is part of the ritual you go through when you're a valedictorian. That's my take.
Yeah, Lolly says, look, he looks quite confident. I would agree. He's the smartest kid in his class. And you can tell that he does have an air of confidence. Look at this. I love it. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate you being a member. I got to go back to Scott Duffey. A couple more things. I could do another 3 straight hours. But we're going to come back on this story tomorrow at 12:30. And then for those of you who do not know, there was a murder of an FSU law professor back in 2014 that's been featured heavily on Dateline and 2020 and other shows. And the matriarch accused of setting up the hit is in court 2:30 tomorrow. That is Donna Adelson. We're going to take that live, and we made a commitment to bring you all breaking news. Said we'd start in 2025, but how could you not cover a story like this, especially when you're a news guy? Anyway, here we go. Contest. Oh, there's a contest here, and it goes to Sandy Terps. And look what she won. She won Dr. Ann Burgess's book, which is signed A Killer by Design. More giveaways this holiday season. There you go. So Ann was kind enough to sign her book at CrimeCon, and now it is going to be going out to that person. So congrats. Scott Duffey, you got to write a book so I can send out signed copies. But Scott, what is going on now in terms of the wider investigation? Someone said there's no way his family, and he said to have 5 siblings. I've not confirmed that. There's no way that his parents or siblings would not have recognized him. So are FBI agents knocking on his parents' door tonight? Has that already happened? And what are they going to be asking them about?
Yeah. So all of that. I hope he had and I think he did. If I read right, he was on his computer or his phone doing something when the call went out that he's sitting in the McDonald's. So right now you are doing a complete profile. Where has he been online? Who has he been in contact with, etc. Now, looking at the mugshot, which is probably the exact same thing he was wearing while sitting, you take a hood off, and it changes a person, right? Of course, you had many people saying the person that he's smiling while flirting with the hostile employee, that's a different person, and so you have all this. These experts that come out and say, oh, this is different and that's different. So imagine to the everyday public and not being within New York City, you're talking about somebody who's just had the wherewithal in a McDonald's to say, that's somebody that needs to have a conversation with a police officer so I can rest assured that I did my job. It is amazing. I'm amazed that he's still, if that's the same black scarf that he had throughout New York, that at least that wasn't discarded, which I think says a lot about him. So it's there's a lot going now on in the backgrounds. They want to be able to have a last known location so search warrants for residents can be done. And I don't know if definitely his family is in the middle of being contacted, not to mention close friends, associates, and anybody else that can at least give a better picture of what's been going on with this individual and at what point, because I don't think in his 2016 valedictorian speech, he has this in mind for his future.
Yeah.
Where did he make that turn? Law enforcement wants to know that.
Yeah, and so does Ann Burgess. I got to tell you, I'm looking at X, and even I am blushing. The amount of comments this guy is getting, Ann's going to have her work cut out for her, because it is bordering on the perverse. But people are drooling over this guy when he is now accused of killing this guy, Brian Thompson, who's a father of two. But the internet, as they say, is just salivating, and that is an understatement. And this is going to be a unique case for Ann and Greg McCrary from the FBI and others who study this sort of thing. It's definitely going to be different. I'll just leave it at that. He did repost an article very quickly, and then we'll wind up, I promise. He did repost an article from a Wall Street Journal article. It was entitled "Obstacle to Deficit Cutting: A Nation on Entitlements." That's interesting, because now he's talking about entitlements and possible monies that people are getting paid. And then also, he was a co-founder of something called AppRoar Studios, which describes itself as an app development startup founded to provide the simplest and most engaging gaming experience. And we've seen this with other people. In particular, I remember Adam Lanza, the school shooter in Sandy Hook, who's addicted to video games.
Yeah.
Do you think this had any bearing on this crime? Rob D'Amico said it's possible they're so realistic that he could have learned his shooting stance from a video game.
Right, he could have, and he was trying to set up an app for it. The Monopoly money, I think that's good. I always want to know how much money it was. Nobody's been able to tell me how much was in this backpack.
Yeah.
Did that have any significance?
By the way, Ann, when it comes to the Monopoly money, any more thoughts on that? Because earlier the Philadelphia shoulder surgeon was asking if it's because healthcare has a monopoly. These companies have a monopoly on the business.
There you go. Could be. Absolutely. Yep.
She went to Penn, by the way. She went to Penn. So there you go. Smart minds come from Penn, but not all of them are evil. But what about this video game connection? You think that there is a chance that it's connected?
Well, I'm just wondering if he has designed one like this of getting away with murder or something along that line. You'd have to take a look at what he has done, because he evidently is very, very adept at it. So I that has to be a part of this. Is that when maybe things started to turn for him? Something did. I would agree with everyone that something did. I don't think at when in 2016 this was what was in his head.
Yeah. Dr. Burgess, do you think he had a mental break?
No, I don't think he had a mental break. If anything, he's going to be depressed. He could be, I always call people like this, is he the hole in the donut that he feels like it's nothing, and he's got to pump himself up to be really something. And he feels so justified, it had to be done kind of attitude, that this is the only way we can break the system, this healthcare problem. Again, that his parents that his family is involved in healthcare, that adds a whole nother layer that we haven't really looked at. But why he picks this particular CEO certainly has some kind of significance. And don't forget, he knew where he was, who's giving him the information of when he leaves the hotel. He left it and only had a few minutes to cross the street to get to the Hilton. I guess it was from the Marriott to the Hilton, and he's caught in that short a time.
COE, let me know what we're looking at here. This is obviously from Law and Crime. This looks like it could be an upcoming press conference of sorts in Altoona, because I think I'm seeing, and now we're not seeing it. COE creating mysteries of her own. Hang on one second, everybody. COE, it's your big moment here. Is that a press conference that's about to happen?
Yeah, it's a presser without the local press. New York is there.
So I don't know if the guests want to stick around. I was about to wrap, but I'm going to definitely stick around. So thank you, COE. We're going to take this live as soon as it happens, a press conference. Scott Duffey, I was going to get your final thoughts. You're welcome to stick around for the press conference. For those who do not know, Scott joins us every Friday on Great Scott. It's your True Crime Phil with himself and America's most respected detective, Phil Waters, who's investigated over 400 homicides with a 96% clearance rate and a 93% confession rate, which is unheard of in the business. Phil Waters, probably the best at interviewing people. Again, we're waiting on this press conference. Interesting point that was brought up. This tipster is said to be some people are saying it was a McDonald's worker, but most reporting has said it was an elderly person. All joking aside, there is already a fan base out for this guy and people who look at him as a martyr. They have to be careful with this tipster to keep their anonymity, because you don't want anyone crazy going after somebody who thinks that they turned in their hero. How do you deal with that? Scott Duffey.
Yeah, and I would say that especially with regards to the money itself, the reward money, I would hope it would double or triple for that caller, and everything done possibly to conceal the identity in this part, young or old, whoever that person is. They did a awesome thing, and they participated in the carriage of justice, regardless, right, of what people say online. This is an individual you don't have to have sympathies for, but it is a human being who is a father, and think alone of his family, and that's what people should be thinking before they post things online. We all have issues with insurance companies and what they do or don't do, but never to the point of taking a life or any type of violence to get their point across.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about everybody here. We're grateful for your time. You're welcome to stay for the presser, but if you have to go, no pressure. She's talking to the best guests. Rob D'Amico, before I let you go, if you want to go, this is another news photographer. I'm telling you, they're all the same, but different. Anywhere you go, but this is a photographer doing a sound check here. Scott Duffey, you can see right there is they're doing a white balance for the cameras, and you see that KYW and ABC6. Those are the big Philly stations in-house. They had a drive. Their news director said, you better get your behind over to Altoona, start driving west, and that's what they did. Rob D'Amico, if you're the lead investigator here, a guy named Joe Kenny, kudos to him, NYPD chief of detectives, what do you do now?
Well, now you got to break down the true grinding of an investigation. Again, starting to look at priorities, because resources are going to start going away. The NYPD paid a lot of overtime to get this far, and they're going to start backing off the resources because the threat to the public and figuring out who he is. And then you're going to have to really start grinding down who's going to be doing what. He's still going to have a team. And then you're going to have to start figuring things out. Once you get him back, is he actually talking? If he's not talking, and then all this search warrant, all the paperwork starts for searching his social media, his emails, the house he was living at last, and then interviewing all these people who knew him that are somehow connected. And this is where, the adrenaline goes down, because the lead detective was probably, if he was sleeping, it was maybe an hour at his desk. He's had more coffee than all of us combined, just like so many other people. And then the adrenaline goes down too, because trust me, I've been on cases where I haven't slept. I remember one kidnapping, I didn't loosen my tie for 36 hours. And then I slept for 9 hours straight. So it's one of those things, like all this comes up, and now it's just the bare, grunt of investigation comes in, setting priorities with resources, and then talking to prosecutors. They'll want more of this one thing, and you'll get more witnesses. You got to send out detectives to talk to.
Yeah, it's a milestone. Thank you, Michelle, for pointing that out. 132,000 strong. We just got started in true crime 2 years ago, and have the best guests, and cannot thank them enough. And
Yes.
a better community. No, I said and, but I am going to come to you, Ann. So he also liked, and I'm a huge fan of him as well, but it appears he's a fan, Luigi Mangione is, of Dr. Seuss, because he quoted him from the Lorax, and he gave it 5 stars. And the quote he selected on his Goodreads account was from Dr. Seuss's The Lorax: "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not." Interesting quote.
Right, very interesting quote. You're right. And so that there you are. Does he feel like nothing further is going to happen? And if he's feeling like that, he can he gives him justification for shooting and killing. It could be an underlying real a depression that is certainly undeclared. But his writing, the things that his attention is what we want to look at. So that's a good quote.
Yeah. Scott Duffey, something I'm thinking about. I know as a news guy, you chase a big story and then it's over, and it's kind of anticlimactic. It's kind of like a adrenaline dip. But for investigators, you work so hard to catch the guy. It seems like they have him. Is there sort of that dump? And you heard Rob D'Amico saying now the real investigation starts. It seems like it would be tough to gear up for, quote unquote, the real investigation now that you did all this work to catch this guy. So how do you balance all that?
Probably with a good bourbon and a good slice of pizza. Sausage and pepperoni is my go-to. Yeah, this is what detectives live for. What law enforcement they're you have a case where everybody is watching, not to mention your powers that be, your supervisors and ranking staff that are constantly wanting updates. So that takes a lot to manage all the different personalities within your own inner circle of law enforcement. And then, of course, now gearing up for prosecution. And I totally agree with Rob in that assessment. This is where now you have prosecutors are like, now it's in my court. So this is what I need, and I need it yesterday. So it's, as long as I'm sure there are people that say, hey, how come he's not caught yet? 5 days is great. It's not a lot of time, especially for if law enforcement hadn't a DNA hit or a fingerprint hit or somebody that called day one. That's my brother, uncle, whoever, whatever, and he's here right now. So minus that, you were waiting on the public, and so lo and behold, so you have now 5 days of his travel that they can go and get those pieces together, because I can guarantee you prosecution wants it, and don't even know what they're looking for yet, but they want it. So this is, yes, they can sigh relief and maybe calm their bosses, but now they have to deal with their prosecutors as this moves forward.
Hey, Rob D'Amico, by the way, we're waiting for a press conference. Go ahead, Rob. This is a press conference that's going to happen in Altoona anyway.
It's already snuck out that some of us are going to have a channel on your other channel, and I'm going to do Inside the Line with Rob is the title. But I talked to you, but I think I'm going to have to do like a happy hour with Rob where we get some of your other guests on. Scott, like, you can pick your favorite drink. I'm going to have bourbon, maybe a pizza, and we just talk about some of the things that we've done, because I think that would be fun. Drinks to loosen you up a little bit, type of thing. So
I hope I'm invited. I haven't done anything fun, but I hope I'm invited.
Oh, of course. But I think like the more like the bourbon gets out there, maybe a little pizza, Definitely have to have Ann on because we all want to hear her talk. So you tell me what you drink, Ann, and I'm sending a bottle.
Ann drinks from the Fountain of Youth, Rob D'Amico. That's what she drinks from. And there was something
That's probably
else.
red wine, but
yeah. By the way, Scott, and no hard feelings. Do you guys want to stick around for this press conference? If not, totally your choice.
Yeah, I have another meeting, so
okay.
I have to say. So say bye to everybody. That's very, very interesting.
And thank you so much. For those who do not know, Ann is a literal living legend, nursing professor at Boston College, and basically the person that started profiling in this world. Just featured in a Hulu documentary called Mastermind. It's her story. Check it out. And thanks so much, Dr. Burgess.
Thanks, Joel. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Ann.
Scott Duffey, what's it like for you to be on a panel with Dr. Burgess? You're like a law enforcement geek, if I may call you that. You nerd out on stuff like this. What's it like to be here with Ann Burgess? And by the way, Rob and Scott, do you want to stick around? It's up to you.
Yeah, I have to do something at 7:30, but I'll stick around till then.
Oh, perfect. It's going to happen before then.
Yeah, you'll have me until about 7:10. I'll just jump off.
Okay, awesome. But
I will. And Rob, I echo Rob's comment right at the start of the show. When you get in front of certain people, you turn into a fangirl and you get nervous. And Ann's reputation throughout. Imagine, I'm 9718. Her reputation before that just brought not only behavioral science but everything that we think. My interviewing skills are based upon things that come out of her work and so forth. So it was pretty cool to have to be on the same panel with her.
Yeah, COE, I just sent you something really interesting. Please take a look at it, and if you can, pull it up. I'm not sure if it'll still be in existence. Rob D'Amico, I was going to ask you, I mean, now his Twitter account is suspended. Other things are being suspended. I'm surprised that it took him that long to do it. Who does that? Is that an FBI thing? Some nerd at the FBI?
Any of the social medias have actually some probably retired law enforcement folks that work there that are the liaison to law enforcement. And you put the request in, it's got to meet a certain threshold. I screenshotted his whole X why it was still up, because when you sent it to me, I couldn't believe it was still there. I think I made a comment on that on that part of the podcast. I'm like, wow, they haven't shut it down yet. But it was just really fresh coming out. But they want to take it down and preserve it, and get other people from posting to it and doing other things. So
shout out, by the way. I'm sorry, Rob. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I got some news here. This is Britt K. She just tweeted, and I'll retweet it at Podcast STS. She's a huge help, always here. The criminal complaint, it's super small print. I'm going to try to read it. You see the NYPD officers. This is about to start. So we're going to watch this, and then I'll read you some of this criminal complaint, and then we'll call it a day. COE, the volume's up, I take it, because I'm not hearing anything.
That's a big New York contingency.
They don't mess around, man.
Yeah.
Just waiting for this to get going. Usually you hear some ambient noise. Not yet, but we obviously thank you to Law and Crime for covering this. It's got to be awkward for these guys, Scott Duffey. Till it actually gets cranking. Let me start reading some of this criminal complaint, because upon arrival, officers were able to locate the male matching the aforementioned description sitting in the rear of the building at a table He was wearing a blue medical mask and was looking at a silver laptop computer that was placed on the table. The male also had a backpack on the floor near the table he was sitting at. Co-affiant made contact with the male and informed that officers were called to the McDonald's for a suspicious male matching his description. Co-affiant asked the male to pull down his medical mask so he could see his face. The male complied and pulled down his mask. Affiant and co-affiant immediately recognized him as a suspect from New York City incident after seeing photos released of him from media sources. Co-affiant asked the male for identification and provided officers a New Jersey driver's license bearing the name Mark Rosario and a date of birth 7/21/98. So he showed them the fake ID. Affiant took the license and ran the information through the dispatch center. Co-affiant asked the male if he had been to New York recently, and the male became quiet and started to shake. Additional units from the Altoona Police Department arrived on scene to assist affiant and co-affiant in arresting the male. At this time, dispatch was unable to get any information on NCIC with the information provided by officers. Lieutenant Hanley arrived on scene and also ran the information the male provided to officers, but still found no record was able to be found. The male was advised that he was under an official police investigation, and if he lied about his identity, he would be arrested. The male stated that his name was the defendant, Luigi Mangione. Here's the governor, of course, Josh Shapiro, our good friend, with a birth date of 5/98. I'm going to hold it here, and there's no audio. COE. See if we can pick up the audio. Might be on Law and Crime's end. I'm going to try to pick it up elsewhere. Do not know who is speaking or what they're saying, but we will do our best to get you the audio. Scott Duffey, while we're waiting.
We will take you here now.
Can you hear that?
Yep.
My name is Deputy Chief Derek Swope of the Altoona Police Department. Today we're going to go through an incident that occurred in the city of Altoona. This morning at approximately 9:14 a.m., Altoona police officers received a call of a suspicious male at a local restaurant. It was reported that the male matched the description of the UnitedHealthcare murder in New York City. When officers arrived, they made contact with the male who had a face mask on. That male was asked to remove his face mask, and officers immediately recognized him as a suspect in the New York City shooting in recent days. That male was asked for a form of identification. He then provided a fake identification card out of New Jersey. After a brief investigation, it was determined that the ID provided was in fact a fake ID, and he was subsequently arrested for a forgery charge. Once he was taken into custody for that forgery charge, he was transported to the Altoona Police Department. Once at the Altoona Police Department, that male was searched instant to arrest. It was discovered they had a United States passport that identified him as, Luigi Mangione. From there, continued search of his property. A firearm was located, and a suppressor was also located. There were also other items of evidentiary value that were located that would assist in this investigation. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Governor Shapiro for some words.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Swope, and let me acknowledge and thank the law enforcement who I'm joined with today, beginning with Lieutenant Colonel Bivens of the Pennsylvania State Police. I want to thank Senior Special Supervisory Agent Szabo from the FBI, and acknowledge NYPD Commissioner Daughtry and the women and men of the NYPD who join us here today, District Attorney Weeks, who you will hear from shortly. And I just concluded a briefing with Mayor Adams and Commissioner Tisch from New York. I want to begin by thanking our fellow Pennsylvania resident who acted as a hero today. Pennsylvania resident saw something early this morning at McDonald's and said something to our local police. Our local police here in Altoona acted swiftly. I want to say a special thanks to Officer Tyler Fry of the Altoona Police Department.
CO, bring it up when you have it.
Months into his time serving his fellow people here in Pennsylvania, and he acted swiftly, he acted with smarts, he acted with calm. You know, safety.
Go to yours, Joe.
Yeah, Rob, turn yours off.
The relationship.
The suspect was just arraigned here in the courthouse, and presumably New York will file charges very, very soon. That process will continue to play out, and justice will be delivered in this case. This case is hinged on attention. In fact, the attention in this case and the killing of Brian Thompson was helpful, no doubt, in allowing us to capture this killer, in alerting that individual at McDonald's this morning, and then having that individual contact the police. Some attention in this case, especially online, has been deeply disturbing, as some have looked to celebrate instead of condemning this killer. Brian Thompson was a father to two. He was a husband, and he was a friend to many. And yes, he was the CEO of a health insurance company. In America, we do not kill people in cold blood to resolve policy differences or express a viewpoint. I understand people have real frustration with our healthcare system, and I have worked to address that throughout my career. But I have no tolerance, nor should anyone, for one man using an illegal ghost gun to murder someone because he thinks his opinion matters most. In a civil society, we are all less safe when ideologues engage in vigilante justice. In some dark corners, this killer is being hailed as a hero. Hear me on this. He is no hero. The real hero in this story is the person who called 911 at McDonald's this morning. The real heroes every day in our society are the women and men who put on uniforms like these and go out in our communities to keep us safe. This killer is not a hero. He should not be hailed. Mr. Thompson, I understand, was laid to rest earlier today in Minnesota in a private setting. As the conversation continues about this case, let's be mindful not to dehumanize him and make him just an avatar of a system that is disliked by many. He was a father, he was a husband. He did not deserve to die like this on a sidewalk in New York City. I again want to thank all law enforcement present here this evening. Law enforcement works best when it works together. In this case, we have the New York Police Department working together with the Altoona Police Department, working together with our Pennsylvania State Police and our partners at the federal level as well. Everyone came together to solve this case and keep the public safe. I again want to ask my fellow Pennsylvanians if you have any information regarding this suspect or his travels throughout Pennsylvania, please share those tips with us immediately. And with that, I want to thank District Attorney Weeks for his important work today and invite him to the microphone to say a few words.
Thank you, Governor. Good evening, everyone. I would echo the governor's sentiments law enforcement does work at its best when they work together. I'd also like to thank District Attorney Seidel. He and his staff came down from the Manhattan District Attorney's office today in record time to assist us at the outcome. Thank you, Governor Shapiro. Good evening, everyone. I would echo the governor's sentiments. Law enforcement does work at its best when they work together. I'd also like to thank District Attorney Seidel. He and his staff came down from Manhattan District Attorney's office today in record time to assist us at the Altoona Police Department. And as the governor stated, the state police, the Altoona Police Department, the FBI, the New York City Police Department, Logan Township Police Department, the Blair County Sheriff's Department, and other agencies all worked together today to do what needed to be done to seek justice. I often brag about how the community in Blair County isn't afraid to say something, to report a crime, to contact local law enforcement. And I've often touted how they've made their community, whether it be Altoona or somewhere else, a safer place to live. And today I submit that a resident from Altoona and the Altoona Police Department helped make New York City a safer place to live and helped to kickstart the process to seek justice for a senseless killing. So again, I'd like to thank everybody, and it's my honor to introduce Deputy Commissioner Daugherty at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kaz Daugherty.
On behalf of the New York City Mayor Eric Adams, my boss, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, wants to extend once again their appreciation to the Altoona Police Department, to your leadership team, federals, state, local authorities, and especially to the customer at the McDonald's that seen something, said something, to the McDonald's employee that called 911 and reported this individual inside of their restaurant. The men and women behind me, the detectives, some of these detectives that are standing behind me haven't been home since Tuesday when this incident happened.
Wednesday.
They've been working this case tirelessly around the clock. And when they got that phone call, immediately they jumped in their car, the police car, and raced down here to go see if this was the individual that we were looking for. That's dedication. That's their commitment to bringing this individual to justice is just standing behind me. And on behalf of the mayor and the police commissioner, they extend their thanks and appreciation to you as well. Here's a message to the criminal element that think that they want to commit a crime in New York City and cross state lines, county lines. The message is very clear. Police Commissioner Tisch's police department will find you and bring you to justice. Just look behind me. Thank you.
I think with that, we'll be happy to try and take a few questions.
Question, I guess maybe for the local law enforcement about the arrest specifically today. I don't know who that would be, but
Altoona, please.
I guess I'm curious if we could hear a little bit more about the dynamics. If you could step to the podium, sir. If we could hear a little bit more about the dynamics inside that McDonald's. I know there was some detail in the affidavit about what happened when the individual was asked if he'd been to New York. Could you speak a little bit to his demeanor and how that played out?
Sure. So it was a peaceful arrest, first and foremost. The officer quickly recognized the male as the suspect from the shooting. And within several seconds of the first contact, he had asked the suspect if he had been in New York City recently. And that really invoked a physical reaction from the suspect. He became visibly nervous, kind of shaking at that question. And he didn't really answer it directly. So that statement alone really said a lot. And the suspect didn't have to say a lot after that question to show that, you know, he was very nervous at that point.
Was that the officer that the governor mentioned whose who's new on the job, who was involved in that?
Yes, so Officer Fry's here to my left. Officer Fry, you step this way a little bit. And then his partner that he was with, Officer Joe Detweiler.
Officer, could you maybe identify yourself and maybe describe that whole interaction and what played out?
Spell your name. Yeah, Patrolman Fry, Tylerfrye. So whenever we got on scene there, we were able to pretty much find where he was at in the restaurant. And as soon as he was wearing a blue medical mask. As soon as we pulled that down, or we asked him to pull it down, me and my partner and I recognized him immediately, just from what we saw in the media with photos, videos. We just didn't even think twice about it. We knew that was our guy, but he was very cooperative with us. Didn't really give us too many issues. Once we found out his identity, we took it from there.
How does it feel with 6 months on the job as a law enforcement officer to be part of, to make this arrest?
I can't say I was expecting it by any means, but it feels good to get a guy like that off the street, especially starting my career this way. It feels great.
So upon his arrest, has he made any statements since his arrest? Has he asked for a lawyer yet?
To my knowledge, he hasn't made any statements.
How long was he staying in Altoona, and where was he staying? And then was the gun on himself, or was it in like a car somewhere?
We are still investigating how long he's been in Altoona. There's still a lot of follow-up to do in this case. Again, the men and women behind me are assisting with that. So we're still looking into it.
I'm going to ask Lieutenant Colonel Bivens of the Pennsylvania State Police to address the question you just raised.
Thank you. So there are a lot of things that need to be followed up yet in this investigation. Certainly, there were a number of items that were found on his person, in his backpack, that have been inventoried, and we've begun to do an analysis of some of those. There were written documents. There are electronic devices that are in the process of being downloaded. Search warrants are obtained. And so over the next hours and days, those efforts will continue. And we're going to take a closer look at all of the information that we can glean from that regarding his activities up until and during the time of the homicide, his flight from New York. And we know that he has been in Pennsylvania, excuse me, for several days. And so part of that investigation will also focus on trying to retrace his steps. We've already identified businesses, for example, that he frequented in this area and activities that he engaged in. That led us to more evidence. And so all of that is becoming kind of a mountain of evidence that has to be analyzed and looked at. I'm confident we'll have a much better idea of his activities over the past number of days in New York and in Pennsylvania. Additionally, we're also trying to determine that we don't have another actor or an accomplice out there. And so this information will be used to help us prove or disprove whether that exists and whether there were any other intended targets. So a lot of questions that are out there that are unanswered yet, but we have a lot of information that we can examine that hopefully will give us some of those pieces of data that we need. You asked, or someone asked about the interview. He was initially cooperative. He is not now. And so he has been arraigned and transported and will be securely housed pending the filing of additional charges in New York.
So the investigators say that he is an actual suspect in the Governor Shapiro.
You mentioned that he was in Pittsburgh at some point. Is that correct? What
Yes.
do you know about that time in Pittsburgh?
Billy. We're not going to get into any more details at this time. We would like to hear from any Pennsylvanian or any Pittsburgher who had any sightings or any dealings with the individual. That's why I specifically asked for anyone with tips to share that with us.
Can you talk about the extradition to New York? How does that process work? I know that you have your case here, but what happens with the New York part of it?
And how long does it take?
Thank you.
So that answer depends. Once the charging documents are filed in the state of New York, we will file a fugitive justice complaint against the defendant. He'll be brought before a common pleas judge shortly thereafter, and the defendant will be presented with the option to waive his extradition or to contest his extradition. If he waives his extradition, we of course will make him available to the NYPD and the Manhattan the district attorney's office as soon as, we're able to arrange his transportation there. If he contests it, that process typically takes between 30 and 45 days to do the requisite paperwork, but we do that all the time in our office, and that's kind of a normal procedure.
On the matter of the backpack itself right now, the backpack itself, you had the one that was in New York. Do we know if that's the same one that he had the time of the shooting there, or is this backpack that he had here one that he may have acquired? And the findings inside, the gun, the silencer, and cash, some foreign currency as well. Is that correct?
I'll defer to someone else. I'm not going to speculate on any of the interpretation of the evidence. I'm going to rely on the officers doing the investigation to complete that and reach their conclusions.
Can we say, sir, that at this point, he is a suspect in the hit on the United CEO? Can we call him a suspect at this point? Obviously, he was arrested on other.
Yes, as we confirmed at his preliminary arraignment, with the permission of District Attorney Seidel, we expect charges to be filed forthwith. And obviously that I'm not going to speculate on that timing, but tonight or tomorrow or sometime in the very near future for homicide.
Just to clarify one quick.
Sorry, sir, can I just ask? In terms of the officers investigating this case, can you say any more about a suspected possible motive?
So at this point, we're not going to comment on that. I mentioned that there is a lot of information to go through. Certainly everything has been or will be shared with NYPD, but there is other information that really doesn't even pertain to that investigation. That, again, focuses more on his activities here in Pennsylvania and other travels. So all of that hopefully will shine more light on it. There is some information that gives us some insight into his thinking, but again, all part of the ongoing investigation. Way too early to discuss that.
As far as the NYPD, we're not going to be commenting on the investigation steps here. In the next couple of days, there'll be immediate availability at One Police Plaza, and Commissioner Tisch will update. Commissioner Tisch and the Chief of Detectives, Joe Kenny, will update the media at One Police Plaza. But I will be happy to talk about that. The Commissioner Tisch and the New York City Mayor did FaceTime Officer Fry, and then thanked them for their service. So that was he got a pretty cool phone call from the mayor and our police commissioner.
Do we know how he got to Pennsylvania? Was it through aircraft, train, bus? How did he arrive in Pennsylvania?
Again, we do have a good idea of that, but all part of the ongoing investigation.
Just to clarify, Governor, you had suggested, I think I heard you, I want to make sure I heard it right, that he, I guess he took a bus from the terminal at the George Washington Bridge to Philly, and then from there he was around the state and wound up here? Or is that can you be any more specific about how you think this worked?
Well, again, I'll jump in as it's all part of the ongoing investigation. And so, yes, we do have a good idea how he got from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, but there are some gaps in time. And so before we start laying out a timeline of his travel, we really need to work through all of that. And so we know that at some point it is likely he was in a variety of locations across the state, to include Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and points in between.
And then Altoona. So Philadelphia, then Pittsburgh, and then he made his way back here to Altoona.
Again, that'll all be part of the, logically, he's caught here in Altoona. So logically, he was in those locations first. But again, the timeline of all of that will be part of the ongoing investigation.
How did he manage to evade detection for several days? Obviously, he was caught at the McDonald's this morning. Guy's got to eat. For the past few days, he's been on the run for multiple days at this point. How did he manage to evade detection for so long?
So I think, again, as part of the ongoing investigation, when we determine where he's been, where he stayed, those kinds of things, we may be able to answer some of those questions. But right now, I will tell you that based on everything that we have seen, he was very careful with trying to stay low profile, avoid cameras, not all that successfully in some cases. But that was certainly the effort he was making. He took steps to try and, avoid detection with some of the electronic devices and things as well. So again, all part of the investigation, but clearly, somebody that was very security conscious and trying to avoid
And to be clear, he has no criminal record, and this was a name that was not previously known to law enforcement?
I am not aware of a criminal history on this
Could you
individual.
speak to those tech evasion devices? It was mentioned in the hearing, and then the defendant said that those were waterproofing bags. Could you speak a little bit more to what was taken into evidence today?
No, not at this point. Again, I've spoken generally about what's there, but at this point, everything remains under investigation, and we'll have much more information. And New York will certainly have information for you in the future.
How confident are you this is the suspect? Is there still a search for any other suspects other than the accomplice or potential accomplice?
We're still going to canvass. We're still going to investigate. Like I said before, we're going to provide an update in a couple of days by the police commissioner and the chief of detectives back at New York. I will say this though, if anybody out there that has any information that they think that will help this case, to please contact our tip line, which is 1-800-577-TIPS. Remember, all calls are kept confidential.
Just to clarify, the customer spoke with the employee called 911.
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
Was it a customer that recognized the suspect first, told an employee, and the employee rang police? Is that correct?
Yes, my understanding, I was just confirming, but my understanding is the employee became suspicious, thought they recognized, and wanted someone to check it out further.
Someone referred to a customer, but there was
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry, did I say the employee? The customer recognized, notified an employee, and wanted someone to check it out further.
Can you confirm which restaurant it was? Was it the one on Plank Road?
I'm not familiar with the address of that. It's a McDonald's, but is that it? Yes, they tell me it is.
The suspect disputed the currency. Can you explain why there might have been discrepancy or how much he was found to have?
Again, we're not going to talk about what was found in the bag. We have accurately cataloged everything that was in there, and that'll be a matter for the future.
DA Weeks, could you repeat what you said in court about that money?
I certainly stand by all the comments I made at the preliminary arraignment, but I'm not going to comment any more on the evidence at this time. My comments at preliminary arraignment were in support of my argument for bail. Thank you.
We probably have time for one. One or two more questions.
Is he being held in a county or state facility? He will likely be taken to a state correctional institution later this evening.
Can I just say specifically for Pennsylvania law enforcement, over the past few months, you've had an attempted assassination of a former president, now president-elect. Now you've had this. What do you think about that?
Violence can never be used to address political differences or to address a substantive difference or to try and prove.
I'm going to mute Governor Shapiro because he hasn't helped on the Ellen Greenberg case, and he should be. For those of you who do not know, 2011, Ellen Greenberg was stabbed 20 times, 10 to the back of her neck, 2 post-mortem injuries, and the case has never been investigated. And her then fiance is remarried, living a great life. And Governor Shapiro was the attorney general at the time, and I couldn't not mention that, seeing him up there. So he needs to get his act together. Yeah, and I just said it there. PSS here. Philadelphia is laughing at me. Rob D'Amico, to you. A couple of things here that we just learned, and then I got to let you go at the bottom of the hour, and I'll let myself go at the bottom of the hour. We've been back on for 2 hours, 22 minutes, 54 seconds. We did about that, if not more, earlier today when we heard that they had someone of interest in custody. But the question all day, people have been yelling at me, it's an elderly McDonald's employee. I was right. It was not an elderly employee. It sounds like it was an elderly person at the restaurant who then wanted help from a McDonald's employee. They worked together. The point is that they worked together and they did what needed to be done, which was call. Then the responding officer, Rob, 6 months on the job. He said he asked, it's going to be the biggest case he ever has 6 months in. It's all downhill. I feel bad for him. But, 6 months in, he gets his call. He goes there. He said the minute they pulled down his mask, and this press conference is now over, as you can see. Today should really be about Brian Thompson, the CEO, who was gunned down. But, of course, the headlines here or that the shooter, Luigi Mangione, has been arrested. The alleged shooter, obviously, he's got to have his day in court. So they pull his mask down. He is begins shaking, visibly shaking, they say. They bring him in. Rob, once this has now been confirmed by a police report that once in custody, they took a weapon out of his backpack and a suppressor. That gun, they say, was made with a 3D printer, which is pretty amazing. Another way technology is destroying the world. But it was made with a 3D printer, and he's now being held without bail on gun and forgery charges. He also was in Pittsburgh, which is interesting because that is past where he was. That's further west of where he was, which means he went back. Rob D'Amico's been with the FBI and the military for about 40 years. Former hostage rescue team member, all-around great guy. Rob, what do you make of that press conference, and anything you want to add before we say goodnight? You're muted.
Facts out.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it got the facts out, and then it got to the point where the questions got silly, and you got to know where to cut those ones off because they're not going to answer certain ones, especially about the investigation. They put out, hey, if you saw him, gave the number. The fact that the gun was in the backpack again, when was that backpack searched, and how it was searched is going to be important to the case. Because a Terry stop, you're allowed to pat someone down for your safety. Then if you decide that you're going to arrest them for giving a false identification card, then that backpack, since you're going to bring them into the station, you can actually inventory that backpack so you know what he has to give it back, and then you can find it. So there's some legal stuff in there. I think they're fine with it. And it was, again, the guy's going to be going after like people egging houses later, and he's just going to relate to everyone about the biggest story that he's ever going to have. Hopefully he wins Officer of the Week. Hopefully McDonald's gives him some free coffee and stuff. I hope they match the rewards for each one of those two people. I hope GoFundMe, maybe triples it or quadruples it or something. But again, it's one of these things that we said in the beginning. Someone in the public's going to see him. I want to know, did his family not see him on the news and not say anything? There's some things out there, but I'm about to go off. I got to do a taping for Good Morning Great Britain is asking me to do a taping, so I'm now going across the pond for some news.
I love it. Do me a favor, ask them if they stole you from us. I'm curious. I bet you they did. But Rob D'Amico, awesome to have you. FBI Special Agent D'Amico to me.
You're my go-to now. You're my first choice, and we're going to do this channel, and we're going to start covering live events like this because the audience gets to participate instead of just being told what the anchors want to ask, and I think that's the way to do it.
Absolutely. We are taking true crime to the next level. Thanks, Rob. I'm going to bounce you out here. Amazing best guest, as always. For those of you who are new to the channel, I know a lot of people tuned in. We do a live nightly show on YouTube, usually at 5 or 7 p.m. I always post times, show information on Twitter at Podcast STS, on Instagram, Surviving the Survivor, on Twitter at Podcast STS, and on Twitter, on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. I just confused myself. So once again, Twitter, it is at Podcast STS, and Instagram, Surviving the Survivor. We have an amazing crew I've got to thank today because of all the hard work. The COE, she's the chief of everything, aka my wife. We call her Bugs at home. The COE, or the co here. Space Coast on the West Coast, always helping us. Those audio issues are almost always on the pool side, and Space somehow figures out how to fix things on the fly. I have no idea how, but he does. So huge thanks to Space Coast. Big thanks to my mother-in-law, SD Sandy, who flagged us on this news. She's becoming a news junkie now, and flagged us on this first thing this morning. Shout out to her. Of course, Steve Cohen, the best booker in the business, and the mods. No better mods anywhere. I'm always afraid to say the names because I'm always fearful I will miss one or two, but they know who they are. And I always say best guess, better community. Special shout out to Scott Duffey for coming on, and shout out to the legend, Dr. Ann Burgess. We're going to be back tomorrow at 12:30 covering this again. Thank you, Neely. There will be developments in this. And then we've got Donna Sue Adelson in court at 2:30 p.m. and a show about what transpired in court, unless there's big breaking news here. That is the plan for tomorrow. We go one day, one step at a time. Thank you to Crash Duh or Day or Duh. I'm not sure, but thank you. Please hit the like button on the way out. Please subscribe. And again, this is what it's all about today. Brian Thompson. He was laid to rest today. He's the father of two. Those kids will never be the same. His wife will never be the same. This was a smart guy, this Luigi Mangione. He could have done good things in the world. Instead, he will likely rot in prison. Brian Thompson's kids will carry on his legacy, and they, I'm sure, will flourish. Love you, America. See you tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time.